Good evening or good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to the Persevering with PCOS live show. I am Yashi of the Mind of Yash platform, and welcome to another episode, especially special in the month of October for Mental Health Awareness Month. I have a very special guest on with me tonight who I came across on Clubhouse, which is such a great platform to making connections and finding persons who you can really learn from in different spheres. And I came across our guest when I was looking at different self-care methods, including what we're going to talk about tonight, which is journaling. And I took part in one of her rooms, and it's something that I always really wanted to try myself. But I never had that little extra motivation to. And her room really did bring out that spark on it, and it is something that I find really interesting, and I could see how helpful it can be when it comes to self-care and your general mental health. So we're going to quickly start. If you guys are here, please be sure to say hi in the comments, leave any questions that you have for me and our guest tonight, and let's make sure and be interactive. Especially I have a special place for this month because of mental health awareness. Because I realized that even with the pandemic, persons are really taking on a lot. And while it is being, talked about a lot more, I think there are some persons who are still struggling. And I could relate to that as well, because I know there are even moments where I too have to do a little extra to get to my mental health to a place that I feel a little bit more free and not heavy. So I'm really so happy tonight to have our guest. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. I'm going to bring her up. So again, if you have questions or if you want to leave any comments, please do so as you're tuning in. So quickly, so tonight's guest is Miss Angie Clay. She's the creative hands and heart behind a self-care business called Liberate and Lather. She's a notebook and paper junkie, bargain shopping enthusiast, natural hair lover, and a wandering nomad. She spends most of her days making the most out of fat by turning it into creamy, body loving smells goods, aka soap, that fuses perfectly with a hot shower. And she's an avid journal writer, and she has been doing that as a practice for the last 30 years. She says that self-care is a huge piece of creating a healthy lifestyle, and she's been able to implement this into her Liberate and Lather journaling for self-care community, which is where I discovered her. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Angie up.
Hey, hi, thank you, man. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you and to have this discussion. I know it's going to be so helpful to persons, especially persons like myself who want to really implement journaling as a self-care routine. I know I shared a little bit in that bio, but Angie, if you could share a little bit more about your business and even the community that you were able to create on Clubhouse and maybe other forums as well.
Sure. I've always been a soap lover, so I would go to all these different shows and I would leave with bags of soap, right? And so I met a lady I used to sell jewelry, and I met a lady at an event, and she made soap. And so I had a few shows with her. I invited a bunch of friends over, and then one day I asked her, would she teach me how to make soap? And she was like, sure. And so I learned the craft, and then that's really how my business was born. Basically, my love of going to artisan shows and like buying soap. And as I was building it, I wanted to have a name where I could implement a liberation of wellness. And so I was like, oh, liberate and lather, lather for the soap, right? And then liberate. And when the pandemic hit, I typically have my shows at farmers markets and in different venues. I live in the Washington State area, and I did my first show over in Tacoma, Washington. And that was the first weekend when everything really began to shut down. I mean, I was actually at the show as Seattle started to shut down. I had just opened up a studio, and life was changing. So I really had to pivot my business. And so I went online, and then it was really a chance because we really had a year where we were indoors. It gave me a chance to start the journaling practice, like really start to implement that into the business.
Mm.
And so that has been so beautiful over the last year. Well, we're really 2 years into the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
19 months or so, something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, and so that's really where my business has blossomed and where we are today. I'm able to talk about journaling because that really became a part of the business as the pandemic grew. And we can see now that people really need an outlet. We can take care of the outside, but a lot of times the dirt will go down the drain, but then our thoughts still remain. So what do we do with those thoughts? They're better outside of our heads onto paper versus inside.
Wow, I love that. It's so true. And something that stuck out to me in what you were sharing is something similar to my own story. Because when the pandemic happened, nobody really had an idea of how things are gonna go. I mean, we still kind of
Mhm.
don't, but we've gotten a lot better. And for me, while the pandemic has been such a stressful thing, and we've had so much loss, and and these things, for me it has been a major growing time for me, like really getting to know myself, doing that self-care, finding that integration, really taking the time to figure out like how to channel my thoughts, how to manage those things. And it seems that it was like that for you as well. It kind of birthed your passion, or even charted it into this different route where it's become something, a community that could help other persons. And what I want to ask about that is, how has your mental health journey been shaped by the pandemic and having this new direction with your business and with your community?
Mhm. For me, when I was in college, I always wanted to be a writer. When I was younger, I always had pen and paper. I mean, even when we look at old family photos, I have written some type of gibberish on the back of the picture. I'm like, what? My mom was like, I don't know. I couldn't control you with the pen. And when I went to school, I wanted to be an English major. And so I lived in rural Virginia. I go up to the big DMV area, to the big city, go to a really well-known university. And in my first English class, the English teacher gave me an F on the paper and he told me I couldn't write. And so after that, it was like devastating. And I stopped writing. I went and I switched my whole entire major. And I just journaled. I journaled all those years. And it wasn't until the pandemic that I realized that my back was against the wall. And in order for me to really have my business flourish online and to stand out to be different, I had to write my descriptions for my products. And I really wanted them to tell a story. And so I had to pivot. So I really had to overcome that um, feeling of like I couldn't write. I mean, I did a a training on a platform called Creative Live, and it's filmed live, and we started talking about it, like why I was like not moving forward in my business, and I'm telling you, I really was choked up. I'm like, oh no, not in front of the global market. Am I going to break down about this whole writing situation? But I
Yeah.
realized at that point that it really was something that prevented me from moving forward. Like I just every time I would write something, I didn't want anyone to look at it, and I was nervous. But during the pandemic, I had to really face that. And I think a lot of people during the pandemic had to pull a chair up with themselves because a lot of times we get busy and we do work and we fill our lives with all these things to avoid the real issues that we really have to look at square in the face and deal with. And for me, that part of my life happened during the pandemic. I had to pull up a chair with myself and say, okay, this is something that's preventing you from moving forward. So let's look at it and do something about it.
Mm. That I could so relate to that, Angie. And what you said, the pandemic really had you face yourself and even make you go back to those dreams you had growing up. Because what I relate to is that sometimes, well, from my own experience, I do have a love for writing as well. And I had a love for other things that were quote unquote not traditional, for like how we usually are trained, or we are taught in the Caribbean, especially, and probably around the world, but in the Caribbean, especially. And when you get that criticism, or when you get somebody saying like, this is not the way to go, you need to go down this route to be successful, or to find happiness, or to be stable, or whatever, and you really go back into your shell because you feel like you're doing something wrong, and then you eventually feel like you're losing that gift, and the dream kind of seems to fade away. And that's how I but relate, because when the pandemic happened, while right before the pandemic, I started doing small things because I really wanted to change the to pivot
Mm-hmm.
because of my daughter. I wanted to learn certain things and have certain skills so that I could teach her, but I didn't know what that was. And when the pandemic happened, as you're saying, I had to kind of face those things, because you don't have all the noise that's happening. So now you really have to sit with yourself and be like, okay, what is it that I want to do? What do I need to do to change right now to help me and help my family, help my thoughts, help my mental health? And so I really do love what you shared there. And one thing I want to share with the audience as well is that it's so funny, like when those things happen as well, it kind of also leads you to the right persons, the right connections. And I remember reaching out to Angie a few weeks ago because I really just wanted to talk about journaling and how that could be helpful for my the PCOS community and for people in general when it comes to mental health. And then while we were talking, you started sharing things about your own journey that the PCOS community and other women and other persons can relate to. And I just wanted to ask you if you want to share a little bit about that, what you shared with me.
Sure. Yeah. So I have myself been battling PCOS for like since I've been a teenager. And so that was happening for me like in the 90s. And so PCOS wasn't the norm. And you typically really don't share about your reproductive system with with other people. I mean, even women, even sometimes I'm in certain circles depending on the age group, when I bring up like, oh, I'm in my fall, I see some people like kind of clutch their pearls, like, is she talking about this right now? I'm trying to explain to you why I'm moody this week. That's all. So yeah, so I was diagnosed with PCOS, and then I ended up having endometriosis, and then I had fibroids, and so I had to have a partial hysterectomy done on October 7th. And so the whole journey from the PCOS and all of these reproductive issues that I've had, like journaling has been like my go-to, because a lot of times, with PCOS and coming up during a time when it was it was really new. So I lived in a town that had a teaching university, so a teaching hospital. And so of course I was a little guinea pig sometimes, like going in and trying different things because it was just a new topic. And so for me, just I didn't realize that like why my moods would shift, or why I crave sweets after I eat, like why all these things was just happening. Or when I went to college, I didn't have a cycle for like a year. In my ignorance, I was like, this is cool, because I don't have to worry about this, But
Right.
as research goes on, the doctor finally said, honey, you really have to have a cycle. This could like end up somewhere we don't want to.
Yes.
And so like the journaling really helped me. Many of you, if you have PCOS, sometimes your mood will shift. Like my mood, I could be doing something. I can go into a room with a whole different set of people and just something's off. And I'm like, I become like an introvert. Like I shut down, and I could never figure out why these things was happening to me emotionally. And so a lot of times people around us or myself, they don't understand what I'm going through, but my journal can hold those feelings. Like when I feel a yo-yo mood, or if I'm happy and next minute I'm mad or I'm sad, or so and so, I don't know, they wore some kind of perfume and I ain't liking, and I'm mad about it. I can write about it in my journal without
Yes.
having to express all my feelings to the person, you know what I mean? And not having any friends. So the journaling really helped me as I look back through my journey with dealing with a lot of my reproductive issues.
Mm, yeah. And well, you kind of shared a little bit about exactly what the journaling process is, but if you could share a little bit more about it, is there a particular structure? Do you just, go with the flow? How do you exactly, what is your process for journaling?
I think journaling really is a collage of many different things. I love collaging, by the way. So for me, I have a special journal that I use in the morning. That's my gratitude journal. So I write typically three things that I'm grateful for, and then I'm an avid Bible reader, and I have a daily text that I read. So I have a special worksheet that I created for myself. So I look at that and try to apply just principles for my life. And then I have just my journal, which I have here. This is my Frankenstein one. So I have my journal here, and then I like to decorate it. I don't care. I can be 46 and still like stickers. So I put stickers in here. I use so paper. It's an African American woman designer, and all my little stickers are little women that look like me. Some of them have journals and books and just all the stuff I like. And so I just decorate that, and then of course you see it's kind of like I just write, I free flow. I do a lot of personal development. So anything that I hear off of whatever that was talked about that day, I may write it in my journal and highlight it, and then to come back at another time. And so I have a small little journal that I keep at my bedside at night, and I just write, just jot like a couple of sentences of like how the day was, like at the end of the day, and then I turn the light out and go to sleep.
Oh, that's so interesting, Angie. So like when you say you sometimes go back to things, because what I've heard from persons as well who have been journaling, I say maybe you're journaling about your dreams and the goals that you've had,
Mm-hmm.
and then like later on you realize like you go into your journal, it's like, wait, I talked about this at this point in time, I wanted this at this point in time, and now it's happening, or something like that. How has that been for you? Like, have you gone back and been like, oh my goodness, this is a growth moment, or this was a dream achieved, or something like that?
Mm-hmm. So some people will say, well, they don't go back. But for me, I feel like journals are personal development workbooks. So one of the reasons why I felt like journaling really saved my life was, when I was in college, I had a relationship and the relationship ended. But I was so devastated, and I would talk about it a lot. And so finally my friends would be like, yeah, we know. You went this place, you already told us, right? I could just tell they were like getting kind of like, here's a story again. So I was able to go to my journal and write. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote until one day I was tired of writing about it. I was like, I am so done with this subject. It was at that point when I knew that I was over the relationship. But it was I determined that, but it was the journal that held all my thoughts. It wasn't like I had to go to people and see their reaction, like, oh, here she go again talking about that, right? So
Hmm.
my journal held all of my feelings, and I was able to write and write and write about it. And then years later, sometimes, right, relationships pop up like, oh, I'm sorry, you were the one, right? I can go back to my journal and look and see how the relationship was and say, oh no,
Hmm.
I'm good. Because sometimes when time goes on, we sugarcoat things that happen to us because we forget the intensity when we were in the thick of it. But
Yes.
having a journal to go back, you'd be like, oh, you left me on the side of the road that day. I forgot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that happened, but I'm just saying, like, those little examples that you would write down and talk about it intensely during the time that it was happening, when those situations could possibly revisit in your life, you have like checks and balances. You can go back and look and say, oh no, I'm good, because no, I don't want to go back to that.
Right. It makes me think of myself and like keeping those receipts because I have this bad habit, but I don't know, good or bad, where like I would have WhatsApp messages or
Mhm.
text chains. And for the life of me, it's so hard for me to delete it because sometimes when something happens, I want to go back. Maybe not to rub it in your face all the time, but just like, to go back and be sure, like, wait, this is what had happened. This is what I was feeling at the time. And maybe sometimes to sit in it a little bit to remember certain, whether it's a bad or good memory
Mhm.
sometimes. So, I could kind of relate to that. And something, just as you're describing journaling, it really does sound so therapeutic. One thing though, where do you keep all your journaling, your journals?
Yes,
Where
I
do
have
you
all
keep
my journals. I started writing in like 1991, like actually keeping them. I have a huge box that's out like in the she shed, and then I'm looking at my bookshelf now, and they're just all. Um, I have them all.
them? Maybe you should like digitize them. I don't know.
I know. I don't. Yeah, I was just looking at them. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do with them. I could
Oh,
have a movie.
oh, I see. Hi guys, I'm my friend Ajay, and Chanel is laughing at my WhatsApp habits. It's really true. But what I pride myself on sometimes with that is like somebody would ask for something. It's like, hey, you remember when we had this, whatever, whatever? And I would be like, look, I could bring it up for you. I could, I could send it to you. So
Yeah,
that
you're
is,
thorough, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Some of us have like detective personalities. We got to make sure we're going to have the right information because you're not going to catch me like slipping. I'm gonna. I see. Look, you told me. I understand. People don't want to look at my emails. I have like 103,000 emails,
oh
and
my
people see
goodness.
my phone. They're like, "How many?" I'm like, you know what? It doesn't bother me. It doesn't. It bothers you, so don't look at my phone. But me, I don't care. I can look at
Exactly.
100.
Exactly. We're gonna journal about that later. It's like, why is it bothering you?
Yeah, go journal about it, but it doesn't bother me. Sometimes I would go crazy if I saw that number. I'm like,
But tell me something, Angie, about the community that you've built. Well, I came across you on Clubhouse. So I see you religiously hold those rooms, and I've been part of a couple, and it has been really great
mhm.
to tap into that. So how has that been? Have been people reaching out to you? Like, have been people sharing their own journeys? Maybe if they started journaling for the first time with you, and how has that been?
The room on Clubhouse has been amazing. I mean, like, is today it was just like full of just love. Like my moderator that helps me, Zainab. She lives in the UK,
Yeah.
and she was just like, man, the room today was just awesome. It was full. Usually Thursdays is kind of like the day that we have low numbers, but today it was just jam packed, and everyone was sharing. We had new people that came in and they shared, and real transparent. Even the first time when they come in, and I always tell the people that are there that like my ride or dies that are always there, that the vibe of the room is really welcoming. I'm from Virginia, so I always like to use like real Southern kind of sayings. Like I just feel like my business is homegrown. It's like sitting on a porch with a rocking chair, just sipping some sweet tea, eating some lemon pound cake, like just really cultivating relationships. And I just really feel like that room has that type of feeling, especially when a person can come in first time, get on the stage and share something so deep and feel comfortable, and everyone's cheering them on. I remember today before the lady shared, a gentleman in the group, she got nervous and he unmiked and he said, "Come on, we got you." And she shared, and we were like, I was like, okay. So it's been really lovely, and even for myself, like leading the room, I'm very transparent about situations that happen in my life, or sometimes I try to hide it, but then they catch it in my right, and they're like, "Oh, excuse me." So it's like a even exchange, um, and that's what I like about journaling. It's raw and it is exposed, and the more you hold back and try to be real frank and like not open, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Journaling is just way different. It's a whole different level of
Yeah.
communication.
Don't
Mhm.
censor yourself. Just, just go with it.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, when I came into your room, I think you had like certain topics, like writing about the streets. I think I understood the first time, but when I got the idea, I was like, okay, I was writing, and I even kind of surprised myself. Like when I went through, I was like, hey, look, I even have a little quote here. But I do really appreciate that about your room. You do feel like it's really welcoming, and you feel motivated to share even more. I'm like, when I hear people share, I'm like, okay, wait, I didn't go that layer deeper that I needed to go, and I'm gonna share some more. So I really appreciate that
Mhm.
about your room as
Well,
well.
thank you so much. And I try to use prompts that are fun and some are deep. Like one was bamboo earrings, and that one was like, whoa, that was just really cool. And then one I just wrote, "It's electric." And man, we went to so many people's family reunions. Like it was just like how people open up, and we have one lady that's from Europe, and she was like, her story was different because she never heard of like the electric slide, because it kind of like that's what it prompted a lot of people. But then at the end we played the song and she was like, "Oh, that's so cool." And it was just this, yeah, it was just like we were ready for the hamburgers and hot dogs and like
And I love that too, because I mean, sometimes you kind of repress certain memories, or, you kind of really forget about something, and you really sometimes need that little trigger to
Mhm,
go back down that road, to bring up things. And I think a lot of times in our healing process or our, journey, it really comes from a place of self-awareness and reflection and really understanding, like, why we do we feel when we hear it's electric, like
mhm,
this came up, like, it had some type of impact on us. So, so I think those things are so important, because you really do get busy, and then you take on all these responsibilities and doing different things, and you kind of forget the core your core being, I guess. I don't know how else to put it, but you know, the reason why the things that you went through shaped the person that you are today. And I think journaling really sounds like a way to go back through your life and really celebrate those things, you know, go back through the hurts, go back through those, you know, the hard moments as well, and understand like how it shaped you to the person that you are today.
So true, so true. Because we always have our inner child within us, you
Mhm.
know. And sometimes we do the things because we were hurt when we were younger, and then you always have to go back and revisit that pain sometimes. And so, yeah, I think journaling just allows us to be
It
free.
opens it all up. And
Yeah.
I think I saw that you also are into essential oils, which is a new thing that I've added into my life recently that has been so great. So,
Yes.
how have you melded those things together? Do you do it with essential oils? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I now, since I've been introduced to essential oils, now it's my thing. Um, I find that, of course, the candle is beautiful and it sets a mood, makes it really cozy. But as
Yeah,
you start to research essential oils and using different oils, they really help the brain and the body, like physically, like relax. Or in the morning, I use one. It's called Energy, and kind of peppery. It's really uplifting. 'Cause my journaling room is at 5 in the morning Pacific Standard Time, and
yeah,
so I have to get. I typically get up about 3:30 in the morning. So when I some days I'm a little like, when I come in my office, and once I put that essential oil into the diffuser and it starts to diffuse out, I'm like, ding, I'm ready to go. And
yes,
then some days when I feel like I really want to go deeper, there's certain oils and there's certain blends that's out there that really works with emotions. And I'm just like, hey, if I am writing out my feelings and I can have something that's actively helping my brain and my body relax at the same time, this is a win-win situation.
yeah.
So I'm just like all about marrying the essential oils and the journaling together.
Yeah, they're really great. I really do love essential
Mhm.
oils. I'm still learning about it and what to use, but they
Mhm.
have been so great thus far.
Yeah, yeah.
So, guys, I see some places still on. So, if you guys have any questions as well about journaling, please feel free to leave it in the comments for Angie. It has been such a great conversation thus far. I really feel motivated to do it. I mean, has it been, well, I know you said you have been like a writer and that has been something in your heart a long time, but have you ever missed a day journaling or, you know, did it take a while to get into that routine or it just was easy for you?
Um, I had a small break where I didn't journal, and I really realized, I said, okay, I only journal like when life is like really falling apart. And I was like, if I die, I don't want people to pick up my journals, be like, oh, her poor hard life. Like they never saw like the good parts of my life. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't, it was always like, oh, she had lots of heartbreak or she had this. And so that's what I was in a challenge, and we had to write 3 pages a day. And so it sparked it back, and I've just been writing ever since. I mean, some days not many, I
Mhm.
won't write because I'm just busy. But I know in my head I didn't write. I'm like, oh, I didn't write my journal
You
today.
feel a difference.
I feel a difference now that I have the room. Um, it's pretty much like it's routine because
Yeah.
I write alongside, um, everyone that's writing in the room. Some days I'm like, oh, where did I come up with this prompt? Because it's not like I've rewritten anything. I write right alongside them. So yeah. And I always tell people, journaling is, if you start putting fast, hard rules with journaling, you're not going to do it. It's not going to be fun. Just
Yeah.
making a journal accessible. I have I carry a big purse, so this size journal fits in my purse, and so I'll carry it on the go. And
Yeah.
if I feel like the mood to write, my mom's in an appointment or something, I'll pull it out and I write. So just making it just available for you when you really need it to just pull it out.
Yeah. Well, you kind of read my mind. 'Cause my next question was going to be like, what are your tips for persons who are now starting off the
Mhm.
journaling process? So I know you shared a couple there. So if you have any more,
Mhm.
um, please feel free to share as well.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I do too is like journaling prompt cards. And so
Mhm.
like the journaling prompt cards just have like just kind of like don't settle. Like so when you think of don't settle, like what comes to mind?
Right.
Then you write that down. But sometimes people just the fact that looking at a blank page, it just overwhelms them. But
Yeah.
sometimes when you have a prompt like what we do in Clubhouse, that helps pull out things that you may not have thought of on your own. And then when you see that prompt, then you start writing and it can remember something from back in the day and you're like, oh wow, well that kind of like is what's bugging me now because that happened. And so I just think journaling prompts. So if you're just starting out and wanting to create the habit, I highly recommend journaling prompt or guided prompts. We're in the age of information. You definitely can find anything, online. Um, you know, so and that's what I suggest.
Yeah, that's a good one actually. I think to if you're now starting off as well, I think I would use that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Angie, the conversation has been so great. So I just want to ask you one thing because I know that this show is Persevering with PCOS Live, and I know you've had that journey, and I do really want to talk about the mental and emotional side of things when it comes to any condition like PCOS, because I really think that that part is maybe not addressed as much as I would like. I mean, we are talking about it a lot more now, but I really want to have that discussion more. So I just wanted to ask you if there's anything piece of advice you want to offer the PCOS community, not necessarily with journaling, but mental health, wellness, and how to deal with the journey and those things. Like, what would you share with them?
Yeah, I actually journaled about that. I just said get a team. Like as far as health, this is what I did. I had endocrinologist, I had a general practitioner, I had the GYN, I had everyone that like thought a little bit for myself holistically. So I just made sure I had the team, and if they weren't like aligned with how I wanted to go with my health, then you kind of got fired. And so I would just pick that. I see a lot of people struggle with the battle in healthcare, and I think now where we're at in the time, you have to be your own advocate for your healthcare. You have to ask the questions and research, and then a therapist if you need it, because a lot of times it affects hormones and it affects us mentally. Like even if we don't want to, a lot of times I'm just like, I'm so glad the creator excused me for certain things. Like why did I just get real hot and steamy because they didn't put a plug in my coffee? Like why am I so like frustrated?
Yeah.
Or like a creative community that you can tap into to be able to have someone really give you a virtual hug or just have a conversation and can relate. And because this is a lifelong journey, there isn't a cure for PCOS, so we have to learn to adapt and push and know when to fall back. And I think that just that's how we have to thrive. And yeah, so research replace your team. You had to come with your entourage or your backup dancers, your squad. I don't know what's the hot term for that now.
Yes.
Recognizes your posse. So you have to have that working for you.
Yeah, I completely endorse that part as well, Angie, because I think for too long I've been trying to do this thing alone. I mean, yes, I did have my doctor, but I needed a tribe. I needed the persons who were going through it to share with. I needed, persons like you to talk about journaling and the mental health side of things. The other persons I've connected on Clubhouse and other forums who made me realize that this journey, while it is a difficult one, it is conquerable. You have persons you can lean on for different things. You could reach out to persons, and I really appreciate the trajectory that is going on now. And I really hope to continue. And also, what you said, to advocate for your own health, because for a long time I didn't know like what questions to ask. I would just do whatever was like told to me because I didn't really understand and the information wasn't as readily available. So I really want to just endorse everything that Angie shared. And I want to thank you so much, Angie, for everything that you shared with me tonight. It's been such a great conversation. And I want you to share with the audience, where we can find you, what time is your journaling room, and all the details if they want to get in contact with you.
Okay, sure. You can find me on social media at Liberate and Lather, or you can just go simply to journalingforselfcare.com, and then that's just links about a Clubhouse. Clubhouse, I'm on there Monday through Friday, so get the time. I know it's kind of crazy. Mondays at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and that day we set our intentions and small steps that we're taking to reach our goals. And then Tuesday through Friday is at 5 a.m., where we really pass the pen and we share and we work on journaling prompts. And depending on where you live in the world, if we have a London room, so BST time, which is 8 a.m. I always want to say midnight because it's midnight for me. It's 8 a.m. British Standard Time. So if you're in around London or India or those any other times work better for you, then that might be a time that we offer the room that works out well for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I still the time zones. So we use AST here, but
Uh-huh.
the time zones are still always, and especially with the pandemic and Clubhouse, everybody is more aware of like time zones, like what time is,
Yeah,
just to be sure. But
yeah, we live in a
definitely
global situation now.
yes. But guys, everybody who's tuned in, definitely check Angie out on her IG page. I will leave it in the comments. And I thank you again for joining me. And guys, be sure to subscribe, to share. Even if afterwards, if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments, or you could send me a DM, send Angie a DM, and I'm sure she'll be so glad to answer. So thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.